Hi, everyone. Welcome. We are just getting started now, but just before I do any introductions, just to let everyone know that we are recording today's meeting so that we can share it afterwards with people who weren't able to attend. So if you would not like to be recorded, please turn your camera and your microphone off, but there'll still be an option to take part in the chat. Fabulous. All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for taking time on a Thursday afternoon to come and chat with us. I am Dr. Emily Rempel. I am the Public Participation Manager and Research Fellow with the research project Civic Data Cooperative at the University of Liverpool. And today we are going to be launching our strategy for the Liverpool City Region Residents' Assembly on Data and AI Innovation. So I'm just going to share my slides so we can get started. Does everything look good on your end? Perfect. All right. Fab. So as a quick agenda, it won't take the full 2 hours for today, but we're going to do some introductions from our team, a review of what our plan is for the assembly and its associated data charter, an overview of our plans for wider communications, a quick introduction to our independent evaluator, Anna Beckett, and then throughout all of those 4 things, there will be options for questions and comments, but please feel free while we're talking to put any questions and comments into the chat as well. Fabulous. All right, so as I said, we're going to start with introductions from the team. I am Emily here in the room. Next to me is our director, Gary Leeming. Do you want to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, hi, my name's Gary Leeming. I'm the Director of Civic Data Cooperative, so really excited to be here as we sort of start this as part of our final sort of 18 months of this phase of Civic Data Cooperative, and it looks like it's going to be a really exciting one, so thanks.
Thanks, Gary. And Grace Reid is our project manager for this.
Yeah, hi, I'm Grace Reid and I'm the project manager at CDC.
Thanks, Grace. And I'm going to go to the CDC team who are on camera. We'll start with Rachel.
Hi everyone, I'm Rachel. I'm one of the project managers within CDC.
Thanks, Rachel. Scott and Emma.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you. I'm Emma. I'm a program manager here at the Civic Data Cooperative.
Hi, I'm Scott. I'm a project support officer at CDC.
And then Chantel and then Kaya.
Hi everyone, I'm Chantel. I'm another project manager at the CDC.
And Kaya. Oh, Kaya doesn't have access to her microphone, it looks like. There we go. Kaya, you should be able to.
There we go. Yeah, I'm Kaya. I'm the administrator of the CDC.
Thanks. So the reason why I wanted to introduce you to the team is that, as I said, we're going to be having lots of opportunities to have some feedback and conversation, but we're going to do that in small breakout rooms of 4 to 5 people. So those will be your moderators for the room, and we'll be able to collect your questions, and then we'll be able to answer them in the larger session. With that in mind, let's get into the meat of what we're going to present and talk about today. So the vision for our Residents' Assembly and Data and AI Innovation Charter is to create a set of open principles on what trustworthy and beneficial data innovation looks like, deliberated and designed by residents in the Liverpool City region. These principles will hopefully help inform future local projects that use data with an impact on people's lives. So this is our mission statement for this project and is reflective of the kinds of projects we do at the Civic Data Cooperative in general. And why are we interested in creating a set of open principles that are deliberated by residents? Well, I think all of us hopefully can point to examples where we think there's a lot of positive potential from data and innovation, but we also know the kinds of harms that can become when data and AI innovation are done without a line on human dignity and respect. So examples abound of that as well, using suicide hotline data to advertise now sort of infamous projects like sidewalk labs. Back here at home in the UK, ways that health data have perhaps been shared in ways that do not align with public expectations and preferences, like care.data, and some of the wider issues around the fact that medical algorithms, when they don't reflect the truth and the experience of communities, can cause real harm and bias. And of course, the many news articles from the past year around the ways that health data sharing and the kinds of contracts that have been happening cause concern for different public groups. And just to highlight, taking that story close to home, we do a lot of work at the Civic Data Cooperative, embedded in talking to our community about data and AI. And this is a quote from a project we did on well-being data in Widnes. And one of the people who took part in the project said something to me that I thought really is the calling card for why we need to do this kind of public facing and public deliberation work. Her concern was that nothing's going to change. So collecting all this data, collecting all this information, and then it just festers on a shelf like a book in a library. If you went back to a person 12 months after you've identified what the support needs were, and you said, and they asked if did anything happen, and they said, no, I don't want to speak to you, I'd be really, really annoyed. And this really speaks to the heart of the work we do at the Civic Data Cooperative. It's not just focused on what are the red lines around data and AI. What we're focused on is how we can create positive change and impact. And we can only do that if we understand a diverse number of different views on what that good quality impact can look like. So with that in mind, a little bit about us. I know some people on this call are very familiar with the Civic Data Cooperative, but some people are less so. So let's do a very quick rundown on us. So the CDC is funded by the Liverpool City Region Combined Authority and supported and hosted at the University of Liverpool to use data to help improve service delivery and solve big problems. So we focus a lot on health data, but also the wider civic data ecosystem, and we do that through three main functions. One, it's exploring and then supporting what we can do with data and research. Second is imagining better services and solutions with data, which is our impact arm. And third, my area that I run, which is engaging and working with community and residents on how they want to use data. So we think of this as our technical work, our impact work, and our community work. And all of those three arms work together. Here are some of the partners we work with. A lot of people on the call represent some of these organizations here. We sit within the Civic Health Innovation Lab at the university here. We also work with the Data into Action program, the Mental Health Research for Innovation Center, as well as a range of data and AI innovation projects. And just a few examples of some of that public-facing deliberation work that we do. We've hosted a series of focus groups from the past year about developing the Cheshire and Merseyside data into action secure data environment. As I mentioned, we've done a lot of work in specific communities around the city region. One is Widnes, where we were looking at building a community-led wellbeing data hub that was designed with a peer research project. And just this year, we hosted the big AI debate in Liverpool, where we brought together questions from our residents to be answered by experts in AI ethics and technical innovation. And through all of those projects, it's sort of coalesced around six questions from our communities that they would like to have answered. And this is really the basis of why we started thinking about what a charter and an assembly could help to answer. First, we've had a lot of questions, particularly in our health work, about the practical aspects of data innovation and AI. So how does it work in a clinical setting now? Is it all rhetoric? Is it reality? What is actually happening? Second is the big one that I'm sure a lot of people on the call are familiar with, which is how can we democratize AI when democracy feels broken? A lot of the conversations we have about data and AI and public perspectives focus around trust. If people don't trust their government, why would they trust their government to use AI? And how do we have that kind of conversation in a contentious environment? Third, regulation. We get from a lot of people, particularly around the big AI debate, asking us who's actually doing the regulation? What does that look like? How can we communicate about that better? And where are the gaps? Fourth, what kind of future do we want from these kinds of data innovations and AI innovations? What could a positive future look like, and what are the steps to get there? Fifth, we've had a lot of conversations around gender bias in data and how are we looking at that in the city region? Who's doing the work to address what data can't tell us and where it gets things wrong? And sixth, the biggest question and the focus of this debate, which is how do we create benefit for the Liverpool city region from AI that uses their data? People in Liverpool produce an awful lot of data, both as data exhaust and through their interactions with structures and governments. So how do we work together with our residents to make sure that data comes back to benefit them? Now, that is a whistle-stop tour of the kinds of work that we are doing at the Civic Data Cooperative, and this project that we're going to talk about is one example. But before we get into the details of the assembly, we are going to go into quick breakout rooms just to do introductions for who's on the call, both for us, so that we can get a handle for that, but also for yourselves so that we can build our conversation upon getting to know each other a little bit. And I just saw a question from Debbie. Are these actual questions for the communities? These are synthesized questions, Debbie. So I can share you the actual questions. They're posted to our website from the Big AI debate, but these are themed questions from several different ones that we have received. Thanks, Debbie. All right, shall we move to breakout rooms? Hi, everyone. Hopefully that was enough time to do introductions. We did cut off right in the middle of Gary's sentence here, but you know. What we're going to do is instead of feeding back at each moment during the presentation, we're going to feedback as a whole at the end. So hopefully each conversation we have in the breakout rooms builds on the previous conversation. So right now I'm going to give a very, no, not that one, a very brief overview of what the plans are for the Residents' Assembly on Data and AI Innovation, as well as the Charter. And then we'll get into questions and the meat of your thoughts on it. All right, so the Assembly. Just to remind everyone from the first part what our vision is, which is to create a set of open principles on what trustworthy and beneficial data innovation looks like, deliberated and designed by residents with an impact on people's lives. So a real focus on impact. Now, the dream from those principles is to develop a ratified data and AI innovation charter signed by the city region, as well as the university, and the NHS Data into Action program, all of which are stakeholders in the Assembly program. But why do we think that a charter would help with some of the issues we outlined before? So a charter, for those who don't know, is a set of principles outlining the values and expectations for an organization or topic, in this case, data and AI. What we're hoping is that this charter will help organizations more easily align their data and innovation projects to public expectations. We want it to both be something that allows a discussion on what red lines are, but also to create a mandate for future work that will help facilitate innovation. I have run dozens and dozens and dozens of public-facing focus groups saying, what do you think about data and AI in many different kinds of applications? And what you hear back, particularly in healthcare, is that we want data and AI to do good. But then what happens is people just do not then take that concept of good and apply it to projects and impact. So what I'm hoping this data and AI innovation charter can do is not only outline those sort of principles and ethical points, but also talk about the kinds of projects residents would like to see happen so that councils, healthcare systems can make that or feel like they have a mandate from residents to do that work. So we would not be the first people to do something like this. There are lots of different kinds of projects in different forms of deliberation happening across the UK about the topic of data and AI, and there has been for many years. So here are a couple examples I've put up of projects and people who are part of, some of them are part of our community practice we hold at the Civic Data Cooperative on public deliberation on data. So things like Camden Council's Data Charter. We've had them come speak to our What's Your Problem program. The Public Data Panel Northern Ireland is run by someone in our program, as well as the public dialogue on the use of data by the public sector in Scotland. So what we're hoping to do is take the lessons learned from projects like this and to learn from them and to try and expand it out a little bit. We really want Liverpool to be the focus here. Obviously, we could do an assembly anywhere and probably get some very similar ethical principles, but with our focus on impact, we're hoping to really scale the scope of the public deliberation to not just be about what are the ethical principles, what is the impact. So there is a huge range of stakeholders involved in this, as I mentioned, and I'll have a list up on the screen soon. Over the past year, we've also been doing with Franco, who's on the call there, a series of conversations with communities who wouldn't typically be consulted about data and AI. So we've already built up a wealth of evidence on what people want to talk about and see happen that we can bring to the Assembly as sort of a stepping stone to have more in-depth conversations. We really want the Assembly to push the boundary from rules and regulations, as I've said, into benefit and impact. And third, we want to open up the conversation on artificial intelligence technologies alongside data and really think about the data aspects of AI rather than the existential risks of AI. In terms of what the Assembly is actually going to look like, it will include up to 60 residents deliberately chosen to represent both the 6 local authorities in the Liverpool City region, as well as an equal spread of men and women and representation across age, race, sexual identity, disability, socioeconomic status, and digital and data literacy. And we're working with a a recruitment partner that has done quite a few similar data assemblies before, Sortition, who will be sending out 21,000 mailouts to residents to invite them to take part. And those mailouts will also include language in Arabic and Polish, which are the next most spoken languages in the city region beyond English. So this is the core question that we're going to put forward to residents. There's going to be 4 days of sessions, which I will go over a few details on, but really fundamentally what we are going to be asking residents is, what does trustworthy and beneficial data and AI innovation look like for the Liverpool City region? And as a secondary question to that, how should residents, policymakers, and experts work together to ensure the Liverpool City region makes trustworthy and beneficial data innovation a reality? So again, what should beneficial data and AI look like, and then how do we make that happen? As I said, the assembly will be in person over a total of 5 days. It includes 4 main steps. There will be an online or telephone induction in small groups to introduce the residents to the assembly plan, some thoughts on speakers, and some questions on data and AI. We'll then have 2 days of testimony, activities, and evidence about both projects that are happening right now in the LCR, some of the risks and trade-offs of data and AI in general, as well as some evidence around their residents' hopes and fears and what they think can happen with data and AI. And there will be a strong focus in those 2 days on literacy, because we're not expecting people to come into this as experts on data and AI. The top line of our recruitment letter is what will be, you need to know nothing about data to take part. I know that that is always going to be a gap in who comes. Saying something about data and AI, it doesn't feel, or a lot of people I've heard who have taken part in other exercises we've done have said that that kind of turned them off a little bit. They felt too scared to take part, but we've also had the feedback that once we put that line, you don't need to know anything, that they're more confident to come and have their say. For the 3rd and 4th days will be in-session deliberation and drafting of the recommendations and reporting back on what that should be in that charter and what those kinds of projects should look like. Here's an example of some of our residents in Widnes doing that very thing, working through research plans on data and AI, doing data and AI literacy. We've done, just to inform people, that we've done a lot of projects like this. I feel fairly confident that we're going to be able to get people to that point where we can get some draft recommendations done after those 5 days. As I mentioned before, we do have core stakeholders who will hopefully be signees of the ultimate charter. That includes the Liverpool City Region Combined Authority, who are our funders, the NHS Cheshire and Merseyside Data into Action Programme, and the Civic Health Innovation Lab here at the University of Liverpool. We also have representation from a range of university, NHS, and government partners, but one of our questions will be, who else should be part of this group in order to make this a reality? And we've had some early conversations about that. So we welcome people's perspectives on who else should be part of the stakeholder group. A bit of a comment quickly in terms of independence and review. As I said at the start, we've invited an independent reviewer to come in, Anna Beckett, who has a wealth of experience on doing AI data evaluation and facilitation, to give us that critical feedback throughout the process and at the end about how we're doing in terms of representing residents' views and creating an actionable charter. We've invited Careful Industries, if it's Rachel Caldecott is on the call today, to help us design some activities and to balance out who's presenting in the room. We'll also be inviting feedback from a range of organizations we already work with who are experts both in data stewardship and participatory methods, as well as data and innovation, as well as crucially the Data into Action Patient and Public Advisory Group, which is actually being set up right now. One of their first tasks is going to be helping us scope out whether the activities we're planning and how we're designing the charter would make sense to get to that ultimate purpose of having an actionable and beneficial data and innovation system. All right, just for a quick timeline for people, as you can see, we're right now in that early November. You're at the online public launch. We're going to begin recruitment for the assembly in early January and hopefully have all the speakers assigned and wider comms beginning at the end of January. The assembly itself, the first online sessions will be held at the end of February, and the first day, I think, is March 6th? 5th, March 5th. In person at the Hilton Liverpool Hotel. All right, so that was a lot of me talking about our plans. Now, I don't expect people to have too many immediate thoughts because this is all new for a lot of people, but I know some of our stakeholders have been in a few meetings about this. So what I'm hoping, the next question you can share back in your breakout rooms is, what is one question, hope, or concern you have about the assembly plans as you know them right now? And if that question doesn't feel right, what one thing do you think must be included in the assembly for the residents to effectively debate data and AI? And I'm asking this to you right now, so we have a quick opportunity for conversation. But if you have a perspective on these things after the meeting or later on, please feel free to reach out to Grace and myself, and we will include your feedback in our plans. All right, let's go into breakout rooms. I was right.
Sorry.
Let's see. Everyone's back. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Hopefully your conversations were illuminating. We have one more section to do a quick presentation on, and then we're going to open it up to general Q&A and feedback. So I want to talk very briefly about our wider communication plans, which were actually brought up in the last session very appropriately. When we talk about giving residents a say in data and AI innovation, and we're only talking about 60 residents, that's really not that many people. 60 is a lot of people to do a deliberative exercise with and will be its own kind of challenge. But there is a wider group of people who will not see the mail out and not get involved. So what kinds of plans are we putting in place? And then how do we think of other groups that we need to communicate with and get on board? So this is a little bit of a map of our audiences and publics. At the center of it, visually and metaphorically, are our residents and various non-professional publics who we want to be the core of our audience and the people who are taking part in the assembly. On the top, we have data professionals. So imagining the kinds of people who are doing the actual work of creating the data and AI innovation in the region. What kind of communications do we need to them so that they feel that they are getting a charter back to them that they could actually use and will be helpful? Very similar with data and digital policy leads. So kinds of people that are on this call right now, who will need to hopefully action the charter and see it as a document that creates a mandate and a potential for positive change. Another big partner in that realm is health and care professionals and organizations, both the people at that patient and public facing role who are running the community services all the way up to the people who are running our data into action program. And then the fourth or fifth major group is external investors. So the kinds of external companies who want to come to Liverpool and do big data and AI innovation. How do we make the charter a thing that says this is a place that creates positive benefit and not a thing that says we're cutting people off at the knees? So how do we make it a positive? So why do we want to do this sort of larger communication campaign I'm going to outline? First, I think both through the mail outs, the conversations that this could lead to, and the kinds of comms we're going to do, there's a real opportunity to increase awareness and literacy on data and AI issues. It's very hard to have a debate and an opinion on something that you don't know a lot about. So a big part of this is trying to get a wider audience aware and talking about the kinds of issues that will be debated in the room. Second, we want to increase diverse public influence on data project direction setting. So that will be through the assembly itself, but also through open communication procedures to get more perspectives on what we're planning, as well as perspectives from those audiences and groups that are on the outside of that circle there. And third, particularly for those audiences on the outside circle, how do we increase confidence to apply the charter principles to work to enable trustworthy innovation? Innovation that does what people want to see happen and is feasible and actionable. And this I wanted to put up just to kind of, again, bring us back to the heart of that resident perspective. We did an exercise a couple of weeks ago with a group of children at the Museum of Liverpool, asking them how their day becomes data. And my challenge was that to them was to give me something they do during the day, anything from the time they wake up in the morning to the time they go to bed, and challenge me to find a way to make that into digital data. So I may have created quite a few terrified parents as I outlined all the ways that digital information is part of their day-to-day life. But I think the core of it and the story I got from it is that kids were very willing to have this conversation and very interested in it, but it didn't turn the way I thought it would. I thought kids would be like, I go to school, because how I think of breaking down children's data, like, how do they get to school? How do we measure how they get to school? What are they doing in school? And it wasn't until the last two children that a single child mentioned, I go to school as an activity to measure in their day. Almost entirely, it was a conversation about the kinds of activities they find fun, and then how that could become data and information. And I think what it spoke to me is to check my assumptions at the door, both on what people know about data, but also how they talk about it. and to think more about how to make these kinds of activities something that reflects what people want to say and talk about data. All right, without further ado, this is one of the last slides, I promise. Let's talk about our planned communications. So one of the biggest activities we will be doing over the next 6 months is launching a podcast about Liverpool and data. This is the tentative title right now, but we will be having a celebrity host in to host 6 episodes of a podcast that focus on 6 different policy areas in the region and how data and AI innovation could benefit people, but also where those risks are. So this is not going to get at the, that very low digital literacy audience, but it's going to hopefully get to the public audiences and policy leads and groups who know a little bit about this and might take part in something that's a little more lighthearted and light touch. So we'll be doing quite a bit of targeted online advertising to advertise this podcast and to spread it out amongst our networks. We'll also, as I mentioned before, be doing a post out to 21,000 households. This is another really big opportunity to put a lot of QR codes, a lot of information and phone lines in place so that people can learn about the plans for the assembly. We'll be doing obviously some web content, which includes a dedicated microsite and a how-to guide, both to take part in the assembly, but also at the end, how to use the charter itself. As I mentioned, we're going to be doing a lot of online advertising, both on Facebook and LinkedIn, maybe not Twitter, we'll see. That's going to both be talking about the podcast and breaking down what the issues in each podcast are that we discuss, but then also the content of the assembly and the charter. We're going to do a newsletter, classic, that will link people out to the web content and the podcast. And then to try and embed this a little bit more in those professional audiences and publics that I mentioned, we will be launching a professionals working group. So this will include both a pre and post assembly workshop to review the plans for the assembly and the charter respectively. And people on this call are more than welcome to email us if they have interest in attending that. So we'll be asking this group to review who's going to be presenting, if that makes sense to them as data and health professionals. And then at the end, what comes out of the charter and their feedback to us on how we should be writing the report up around those charter principles. We'll also be hosting 3 dedicated in-person learning sessions for healthcare and tech workers to learn about the charter after it is published. Finally, of course, there will be academic publications, blogs, reports, and write-ups available both on the website and through journals. All right, so that again was a whistle-stop tour on what our communication plans are. Now, several of these things are already underway. All the things on the left-hand side are underway completely, and we're starting on the things on the right-hand side. What I would like to get feedback from people is 2 things. 1, out of those groups I outlined, who is missing? So we've had some really interesting conversations with our evaluator, Anna, about the voice of tech workers and tech policy in here and where that fits in. So who is missing? Who should we be engaging with before and after the assembly? And then second, what's missing or could be added to this communication plan to make it more effective? So again, who and what are our 2 questions? And let's go to breakout rooms. everyone, welcome back one last time. What we're going to do now to close out is to get the moderator from each room to feedback on 1 or 2 points they felt were most salient from the discussions they've had in their room. So we might just go from room 1 to 5. Sorry, Kaya, you're going to go first then. I don't see you on my screen. Could you? There you are. Are you still unable to unmute yourself? Oh my goodness. And there we go. Allow your mic. Thanks, Kaya.
Brilliant. Okay, we had some great conversations in our room. 2 things I want to bring up that I thought were really interesting was Gail mentioned, including people who are developing. So it's all well and good us saying, people saying, oh, we can change this and that and this with AI, but to have the developers there to say, well, here is the technology and here is what is actually feasible and how we would create it. I think that. And then there was also based around the last question of making sure we are transparent and making sure a real effort, like it is, potentially because of Liverpool, it thrives on its diversity and the diversity of our community. That can sometimes be a downfall in trying to represent our whole community in the members of the resident assembly, because we need to try our best. We need to be transparent that we are trying our best, but we understand that it's a very difficult task.
Thanks, Kaya. That's great. Let's go to room 2, which is Rachel.
Hi everyone. So we had some great discussions in our room as well. So for the first breakout room session, the first questions, we were talking about the need to build trust with the participants, but also to ensure that we're clear about the impact. So when they come in, that we explain what the 1 year, the 5 year, the 10-year impact of their contribution is, so that they feel like something is actually going to happen, and it's not that they just do it and then nothing comes out of it for them. And then for the second breakout session, we focused mostly on question 2, to be fair, which was the things that could be added to the comms plan to make it more effective. And this, we spoke about a post-event launch activity where the participants themselves are asked to help with that and be involved in that, so they can talk about their experiences as well as what came out of it for them, to give them sort of ownership over the outcomes rather than just them giving their advice and then that being done. And we also talked about potentially flyering in places that people use, looking at sort of GPs, community centres, areas where people might see it and be informed, because as well as getting the mailings through their door, we were wondering if some people might think that it was like a circular and not really do anything about it. And then we've got some few other things which I'll share as well. I'll just pass on to the next person, I think. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, Rachel. Chantel?
Sure, and we had some really great discussions in our breakout room too. So what came from our room was like, how do we inspire people who wouldn't necessarily or ordinarily be involved in something like this? And how can people get to grips with this in a meaningful way? So basically ensuring we don't make it too broad. And there's a really excellent point about engagement and communities being fatigued perhaps by people, offering different initiatives and that kind of thing. So how do we differentiate ourselves? And there was a good point about maybe focusing on the engagement officers in the communities, because they're obviously on the ground and have the insight of the communities to ensure we get the best spectrum of people.
Fab.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chantel. And Emma and Scott?
Thanks, Em. I think just to sort of pick on that neighbourhood angle that our room had a real focus on sort of all the way through our conversations were around how can we make it tangible to the people that we're trying to engage? How can we maybe present sort of case studies about work that's already being done around data and AI usage in the region that might hook people from specific backgrounds into the work that we're doing, and then sort of having a neighbourhood lens. And we talked particularly about making sure that sort of voluntary sector and people who are engaged with the different people from different sort of walks of life are part of our comms plan. And one of the things that sort of was suggested was sort of having case study almost hooks to get people engaged in the project that are quite targeted to that particular group of people. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I think there was a good point around preparing people who are going to come with the expectations of what will actually be asked from them, just so that people actually, I suppose, you're not wasting time, I suppose, trying to explain things that maybe you could, explain in material that you've given them prior. I think that was a really good point, just so you get the most out of the time that you're spending with the people who attend.
I think that came back to sort of the concern. The biggest concern was around how do we make sure that a diverse group of people or a representative group of people are actually in the room. And obviously, considering that it's a big time commitment, how can we mitigate some of the challenges that might face people to ensure that we are a representative group going into the data charter? Thanks, Em.
Thanks, Em and Scott. And just to finish up on feeding back from the group conversations, our group talked quite a bit about how we think about active data and AI literacy and how we get not just people on board, but how we really explain this in a real way. And I've heard that in what the other moderators fed back about how do we make this tangible. And that was definitely commonly discussed in our group as well. I think the other thing that we ended on that I think is really important too is how we think about expanding out the steering group membership to a wider civic representative group, and how we both put a mirror to Liverpool itself, but also communicate up through national channels to show the kinds of work we're doing and how we can do this in a place-based regional way. So what I'm going to do now is have Anna, our evaluator, do a quick introduction to the evaluation and a survey about this. So there's another opportunity for people to feedback, and then we're going to close with thoughts from Gary and Ian. Fabulous. All right, Anna, I'm going to unmute you so that you can talk.
I have the ability. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Perfect.
So thank you very much for inviting me along today. So my name's Anna and I'm the independent evaluator from this process. By trade, I'm a deliberative practitioner, and One London was mentioned in my group, and I was an advisor and a facilitator as part of that process. And I'm also part of the current NHS processes on data as well. So kind of steeped in the sector, and also also have kind of strong evaluation background. So kind of bringing those two things together. My mission that I've accepted is to work alongside the team as a critical friend. So I'm hoping to kind of give them advice, provide an independent evaluation report at the end, but also make sure the process does as well as it can do and make sure this project really is a success. The first step of that is a survey. So if you zap the QR code you can see on your screen or follow that link, there is a short survey, should take you less than 5 minutes, unless you want to give me loads of detail, which you're welcome to do. There's lots of open-ended text boxes in there. But that's basically to get your feedback anonymously on what you think they need to keep in mind. Then we're also going to do some interviews, mainly with the core team, but also if anyone wants to say a bit more or felt the form was a bit frustrating or constraining, or you just want to have a bit of a chat, feel free to put your name and contact details at the end of that survey, and I'd love to get in touch with you about that too. So the first stage is very much just about understanding how this process is setting up and how the setup has gone, whether it's gone well, whether or not there's a real balance in terms of what the kind of the plan is for what's happening and the right people have been involved. And then later on I'll be working with participants both through again surveys and interviews, hanging out on the day. And watching how the deliberations unfold as well, to try and give feedback on kind of what we can learn from the process, both in terms of feeding that back as the process goes through and also for future processes. So I've got two outputs. I've got a report due in the new year, which is based on the setup phase, and then another one which will come afterwards, which will reflect on the whole process. But very happy to hear from you at any time. But in the first instance, yes, please fill in that survey. I'd love to hear from you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Anna. And we put the survey in the chat. So if everyone has time to have a quick 5 minutes, do that. We would massively appreciate that. And before we focus on my favorite quote again, I want to just open up to Ian Buchan, who is the mastermind behind a lot of this work for people who don't know him, and to our director, Gary Leeming. Gary, do you want to start us off and then Ian?
Well, I mean, just really to thank everybody for their time today. It's been some really helpful feedback and insight, I think, to help us to sort of shape the next stages of the process. And it's just really good to kind of have that sort of time for us to reflect and to kind of have our own thoughts kind of expanded and improved by the feedback that you've given. So particularly around sort of saying the need to make sure that we are inclusive, but also that we focus as well what's the wider objective and what we're trying to achieve with this, both in terms of both supporting our local community, yes, but also potentially influencing national policy and so on. So there is a standing legacy for what we're doing here that sort of resonates from what we do within Liverpool. So yeah, thank you.
Ian?
You use the word inspired, and there's a general feeling of let our creative communities and our grit to turn data into social good. Let us at it. And I'm sorry I'm a bit late, but I've just come from a similar conversation with a tech entrepreneur in South Africa who has 10 million users on a platform, and their ethical framework is a bit like a user's assembly, a residence assembly. And we ended up by saying that there's more in common with the approach here between Liverpool and South Africa than between Liverpool and many other parts of the UK, particularly in the better fed parts of the UK. Necessity is the mother of invention, and there's remarkable community spirit, grit to solve difficult problems. And we're entering an age when AIs are getting very good at writing software. So computers programming other computers is a technology shift. That means design is ever more important. The more we can work in a technology lab like this one that's translational to unfreeze the AIs, the more our communities can make their data shape those AIs to fit the needs of the community. That democratization of data and technology has got a long way to go, but it starts by inspiring people who are very creative at thinking of what could be, that have lived experience of the problems we're trying to solve and the variety of those problems across our different communities represented in this assembly. So I'm inspired, and I feel a sense of duty, I'm sure Gary and the team do, of providing as much unfreezing of the possibilities through access to technologies that can be shaped and good governance with data to allow us to do this in a meaningful way and meet your expectations.
All right. So what I want to do to close with those stirring words, thank you, Gary, is just to say, obviously, my heart is always going to be with an element of deliberation. I come from many years of experience with doing public deliberation like this, and I think we're at a really pivotal moment in the Liverpool City region to create some incredible change by putting residents at the heart of the kinds of change they want to see. So my favorite participant from our last peer researcher cohort, as she said, I'd be really, really annoyed. And that is our calling card for all of this work, is that if it doesn't happen, I'd be really, really annoyed too. I want to see a Liverpool City Region Data and AI Innovation Charter, and one that is from the residents and for the residents, that helps create positive change in the community. So what I'm hoping, and by hosting a meeting like this and putting it online and being very transparent, is that you all can be as critical as possible to help us on that mission. So I welcome all your feedback. Please fill in the survey. If you have any questions right now you want to ask us, please put them in the chat. We will email answers around at the end. But I want to thank you all for your time. I hope that you'll come with us on this journey in the future meetings. And any other feedback that's not in the survey that you just want to share, Grace and I, or to Ian and Gary, please feel free to do so, and we will get back to you. So thank you, everyone. We will see you, and we're going to close the meeting there.